Welcome to the podcast. Let's join Maki Morris in the Bookroom. Today's guest is LJ Andrews, a TikTok sensation and USA Today's best-selling author of the Everseas series. Her new trilogy is Broken Souls and Bones. Before we join Maki and LJ in the Bookroom, let's take a quick peek at LJ's new romantasy, Broken Souls and Bones.
Hi, LJ. Welcome to the in the book room. And I just wanted to say what an amazing book it was. I mean, it took me on all sorts of ride here. So can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Hi, well, thanks for having me. So Broken Souls and Bones is a new world that's outside of my Everseas and Broken Kingdoms universe, but it's very heavily based in Norse mythology, so a Viking-like culture. And I got the idea for the magic system in the world from old, like berserker warrior legends from the Norse culture. And it kind of grew from there. So the magic system is very, one reader told me it's quite grotesque. So I kind of built this darker, grittier magic system that kind of causes more chaos than helps. And it's like a mix of bone magic and soul magic and blood magic and all that stuff. So it's kind of a fun, dark, gritty world that hopefully is a little spooky.
How did your characters come about?
Well, when I am building a new world, I tend to just think about how I see like a village running, if that makes sense. And it kind of narrows down as I start to build until I find the main characters. It kind of plays like the intro to a TV show almost in my head, like where you kind of just get introduced to like the setting. And then I find my characters as they like walk out. So I built Lyra, who is the FMC. She's kind of a lot of me. She's very introverted and doesn't like the attention on her and things like that. And Rourke was a little harder. He's the male main character. He was a little harder to build. I wasn't sure what he was going to be like, and he ended up turning into kind of a possessive, grumbly, grouchy sweetheart. So
And then you have all these other characters that kind of add to this whole, magic end of the story. When you're creating these worlds and their story, do they come fully formed or do you kind of discover as you go?
I definitely am a discoverer. I have a very loose outline in my head. I wish I could say that I am an intense outliner and not, I'm like a mix of pantsing and outlining. And so as I get to know them, they take much more a three-dimensional shape in my head. So I start to learn their personalities more. And once I have a very basic grasp of their personalities, I usually will do like a personality profile even on side characters. So then as they get more in depth with their dialogue and their actions, I hope that like those things fit their personality. So it makes sense to readers that they would be like, yes, they would probably do that whatever they just did, even if it's stupid. It'd be like, it fits. Like, that's the goal. So it's definitely as I write, and then I go back with the drafts and I know them a lot more and I can fix things as I go type things.
So let's talk about this bone melding thing. I mean, is it part of like the Norse, you know, folklore? Where does that come from?
So from my head, um,
Okay.
that's what stemmed from the Berserker legends, is that these berserkers in a lot of like the Norse sagas, they're like sometimes the villains because they're so mighty, they're so ferocious, they're kind of the wild, brutal warriors. And so I thought, well, how could I create a world where they have these warriors, but it comes from something magical? So the bone melding is a rare magic in this world where it takes dead bone that has the soul left in it and it gives it to living people, and they absorb the power of that soul through these melded bones, and it makes them kind of misshapen and things like that. And so I thought that could be how these feral warriors who are almost undefeatable like are formed. So that's where it came from.
No, the aspect of that was so different. I've never, heard of that kind of subject before, and I just thought it was fascinating. The whole bone melding like into a living person, and
Yeah.
that kind of those bones have its own spirit
Yeah.
and characters that kind of now it kind of infiltrates that living person.
Yeah.
And that was just really complicated, but it was really fascinating. Talking about the Viking, the Old Norse, you have these sentences that appear that looks like right out of it. Do you speak Old Norse?
I wish. I actually did. I did get a book that when I was writing it. So that those are Norse words. The only thing I don't know is if like the sentence structure is correct, because you know how sometimes it's different than how you directly translate it. But I did buy a book of Old Norse to learn the words and how it was spelled and things like that, and to how they used their dialects with the feminine versus masculine. So I can recognize words a little bit, but it's a hard language for me. And then I watched a professor of Old Norse. He teaches in Colorado and he does a lot of videos on YouTube. I've forgotten his name right now, but I watch him and he actually teaches Old Norse and then he does cool videos for people to learn. So I just binged like half his profile on YouTube and to learn about the culture and the words and how they say things. And so it was really fun. So that's how I
No,
prepared for that.
that's really great. I mean, it's almost like you learn the language and the culture to write this book. I mean, that's a commitment there.
I tried. I wanted to be authentic. Again, I'm not proficient in the language at all, and I hope I did it justice, but the culture has always been fascinating. My grandparents came from Sweden, so I love Scandinavian culture and things like that. So I hope it's an immersive world that feels authentic.
It did. I mean, it really did. There were sentences here and there, but that's just enough to make it authentic. It felt like we were in that time. So you did it really well.
Oh, good.
So, discussing battles and possibility of dying, I was really, I was kind of not understanding the reference of, is it Solar and gods?
Yeah.
Is it Solar like a heaven, hell? I didn't know what
Yeah.
that was.
So I took it just the idea of an afterlife, and a lot of cultures most cultures across the world, they have some type of afterlife, right? And with Viking culture, they had Valhalla. And so I didn't want to take Valhalla from that culture because I wanted to be respectful to their culture and and Norse people now, the Norse pagans, and so I made my own. So Salar is just a type of heaven afterlife Valhalla, so.
So is it depending on the action that you had done during living time that you end up meeting God or going to Solar? I wasn't quite
So
sure.
the gods in Viking culture in Valhalla, they would go to Valhalla and they would dine with the gods, and they would
Ah,
it'd be one big party. And so that's kind of the idea of it. They'll go to Salar to meet all the gods. That's a multi deity world. And so, and then if you were awful, they curse you to the hells. In this world, they have two hells, and it's either a burning hell or a frozen hell. And so,
Oh,
yeah, that's their goal as warriors. And that was a very Norse Viking type. They yearned to die in battle sometimes so that they could go to Valhalla and, dine with the gods. So that's kind of the idea. That's why they're always like, I'll see you in Salar with a horn of, they're going to be drinking.
the
So,
mead.
yeah.
No, but I really like the fact that they didn't have just one god, but that's how it's always been for a lot of other cultures, is that there are deities.
Yes.
I mean, you don't try to go there. I don't know. I guess you know more about this, but what kind of deities did you discover while you're trying to study up on this?
Oh, I've always been fascinated by all sorts of culture, like Egyptian, Greek, everything,
Yes.
Roman and Norse. So I studied a lot of the Norse. I have many Norse mythology books to do because that's kind of in all my books, there's a lot of Norse themes in it. So I love to learn of like their legends. That's where I get inspiration from. There's so
Hmm.
many stories of all like, in every culture of their gods and like who they love and who they were found fooling around with and stuff like that and the problems that they're causing. So I love taking stories from that. But in my books, I tend not to name gods. I feel like that's not where my world building goes. So they just know there's gods. Like in this one, they do say there's a god of war, there's a god of fertility type stuff like that. But I never name them. I just feel like that's a layer of world building I don't do. But so,
No, but the deities being more realistic, like human-like.
yes.
I mean, they all have shortcomings, and even though they're deities, but they like you were saying, that they're like maybe drinking too much or a
Yeah.
fight or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what I love about cultural deities that belongs in other cultures, because it
Yes.
just seems more relatable.
Yeah, they do. And I love it. I've always, since I was a kid, I've loved to learn about ancient cultures and then I have several readers who believe in the Norse gods and stuff. And so I've learned a lot from them. And so it's been great.
So while I was studying up on all this Norse things, I mean, I didn't know there were these cultural gatherings where
Hmm.
people dress up like Vikings and they have some kind of fairs. I mean, it's a serious culture
Yeah.
that I'm discovering.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love it. And that's why I try to be very respectful of it because it is still a culture. Same with like, I met someone who is very into the ancient Greek culture,
uh-huh.
and believes in their gods and stuff. So I still try to be very respectful of it because I don't want to ever make people feel like I'm degrading their culture or anything, but I love it so much. So,
Yeah, yeah. So, the tension between Lyra and Roark continues to build. I mean, for like pages and pages, and it just gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And then
yeah.
when they do finally connect, it's like 3 whole pages of this intimate scene.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you gear up for that? That finally they get together, and you want this to be kind of a really hot,
Yeah.
encounter. How did you prepare for that?
Well, that's what you always want. I think tension just makes a romance. Oh, and
Yes,
it kind of
absolutely.
builds the reader up. But Rourke, especially since he is a non-speaking male main character, he uses his hands a lot. And since it is enemies to lovers, I loved the idea that he had to talk to her, but that meant he had to get close to her and he had to touch her a lot. So I prepared that way. I was like these little touches where he had to touch her face, or he'd be on the small of her back, or he'd have to sign in her palm and stuff like that. And I love the wall leans, where they kind of cage each other in, and then all of a sudden they just break because they can't do it anymore. So
No, it was like almost like a release. I mean, it's this
yeah,
tension is just building page after page
yeah,
after page, and then suddenly it's like, oh,
yeah.
quick breath.
Finally,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Now,
yes.
so let's get back a little bit about Rourke, because he is a really interesting character because he's a non-speaker. He
Mhm,
doesn't speak,
mhm.
and um, the people around him kind of sort of made this book right? Where
Yeah.
you could kind of learn how to sign language. And I thought that was really fascinating. Where did you get that idea?
Well, I actually talked to a lot of speech pathologists, and my brother-in-law is an audiologist, so he actually did
Uh-huh.
speech pathology school and then now works in with the ears. And so he gave me a lot of tips, and he said that a lot of times people who are non-speaking or nonverbal, they will have people around them sometimes who create the way to communicate with them, even if it's not ASL or ESL or things like that. They
Mm-hmm.
kind of have their own communication. And that's what like the prince is to Rourke. So I made sure that Thane was like, we're gonna create these signs together. And Rourke signs are not obviously any sign language we have in the real world. I've made up my own type of thing. But that's where it came from, was just kind of learning as best I could through professionals and stuff. And that there are usually things like that where they have someone who has helped them communicate in their own way type thing. So I just
Yeah, that
thought
was
it'd be
great.
nice if they kind of wrote things down for Rourke, because it's also a way to show that people actually care about him, even if he's a grump. And like he does have people in his corner. So
Yeah, yeah, that was really great.
yeah.
What was I thought was really great, as again getting into the culture here, is that reference to tales of, is it Shelvin?
Shelvin. Yeah.
Bonded souls.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thought about destiny.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I like since the magic, there is soul magic in this world. It has a lot of spiritual and soul and afterlife connotations in the magic system. And so with that in my mind came the idea of soulmates and things like that, and like kind of entwined souls and things like that. So that's where it came from in my mind. It made up, I like took some words and combined it to make that word from the language. So I don't know if it's a word anywhere. It kind of was just like a meshed together word. So that's where it came from, was just this idea. I was like, if they're a very spiritual magic system, the people who have soul magic, I would imagine that they believe in bonded souls and soulmates and things like that. And in book 2, I actually really expound on that a lot more. So yeah, that's where it
Well,
came from.
so would your next installment be, is this a trilogy or?
So for sure a duology.
Okay,
Yeah, and that's as far as I know for sure, but I did leave the world open if we want to expand. So,
that's smart.
yeah.
For the readers who love your books already, what could they expect from this new series that's different from your other series?
Well, for one, I don't have Fae in this series. I am a Fae writer normally, and like with the Everseas and Broken Kingdoms. And this is not a Fae magic. This is just very gritty, hands-on, bloody, gory magic. And it is a little bit more hearty with the Norse and Viking culture than my other ones. They do have it, but this one I wanted to build like you were stepping into a Viking village is really what I wanted. And so there's a lot of that aspect to it, when with the bones in their hair and like painted faces and things like that. So, and drums all the time. There's always rawhide drums. So, things like that. And that's a little different. It's still very dark, like in the setting, I hope, and like I do a lot of myths in my books, and still very found family focused. That's one of my favorite tropes. So I always have a big friend group that just becomes bonded over time, even if they don't like each other at first. So, but yeah, there's no Fae.
Okay. Do you have any book signings or any kind of events planned where your fans could meet you in person?
Yeah, this year I actually have a lot. So with Broken Souls and Bones, we have a launch event in Salt Lake City. So a lot of people are coming out for that. We're going to do a mixer beforehand and then launch the book, and that'll be fun. That's on May 3rd. And then I'm going to Phoenix. It's called Teas and Tropes, and it's Enemies to Lovers. She does a trope every year. So this year's Enemies to Lovers. So we are going to that one. It's like the second week in May. Then I've got to think now. Where am I going? I'm likely going up to Vancouver
Oh,
for an event up there that's July. I have another one in Salt Lake City in June. I forgot that one. So there's one day in Salt Lake City in June. And then I'm going to Villains and Vixens in Texas, which is in September. And the last one is Romantasy BookCon in Orlando this year.
wow. So you are going to be
We
very
are going
busy.
we are going to a lot this year.
So do your readers get extra points if they show up in costume?
I will die. You probably get free stuff at my table. So you make us happy, and we're just like, take a book, take a sticker, take a shirt. So so
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. This has been so much fun talking to you because your
thank
book is
you.
just amazing. I was just blown away by all the details. So I'm just going to say to anybody who's interested in dark magic, richly imagined worlds, spellbinding plots, and swoon-worthy slow burn romance, this is your kind of book. And I understand it's coming out on April 29th, right?
Yeah, in the Northern American version, UK
Okay.
comes out in May. So
Oh, okay, great. Well, I'm just going to wish you all the luck
thank
because it is just
you.
a great book and I think you're going to do so well. Your fans are going to love this. So thank you so much for joining me. I really
Thank you for
appreciate it.
having me.
Thank you for joining our podcast. We hope you visit again as we discover new books to read. Sneak peek video previews provided by MDP and Maki Morris.